Let's talk about real property tax, everybody. Now, we know, because we were told by group number 1, that we know that we're going to pay property tax, and we know it's called ad valorem, real estate property tax. Ad valorem. You know what, some of these real estate words are hard to say, aren't they? And if you've never seen them before, how do you pronounce it? But ad valorem means add value, or we could say according to value. The value that we're speaking about is called tax value, or we could even say tax assessed value, or even a tax appraised value. Now, the appraisals are different. The tax department does do appraisals, but they do what you would call an overall mass appraisal. When it's time for the tax department to reassess the county or the city, for example, they do an overall appraisal of the community. Let's say Guilford County. They do an overall appraisal. The tax department appraisers don't come out and look through our house like a bank would if you were going to buy a house to get a loan. The bank's going to send out an appraiser to come in and look at that house specifically. In a county as large as Guilford County, they can't do that. So the people that work at the tax department that do this for a living, they are legitimately appraisers. They know what to look for and how to figure out what properties are worth in any given neighborhood. A couple of ways they can find out what properties have sold for all throughout the year. Thinking about in your unit 5, I believe, when you start talking about deeds, there is a tax that sellers pay when they sell their property. It's called an excise tax. It's a transfer tax, and that's based on the sales price. So the appraiser could figure out, well, what have people been paying for this excise tax? We could kind of back into it to see what the sales prices are. They look at building permits, what's going on in the area. So these tax appraisers really, they know how to appraise the property even if they're doing an overall mass appraisal. So the whole idea is that value is what you're going to pay your real estate property tax on. So tax assessed, ad valorem taxes. What is that tax for? If you get a notice from the city or the county saying we reassess the property, it's the year of reassessment or tax appraisal, why are they doing that? Why are they asking for taxes?
They need the money.
They need money. Well, we do too. They need the money for the municipality's budget. So in other words, it runs the local government. It's how they get the funds to operate the government, the local government, the budget. Let's kind of go back a little tiny bit. These taxes are, we already said they're specific liens, aren't they? They're tied to your property. Anybody that owns real estate is going to pay real estate property tax. It's a specific lien. The tax department has a right to reassess or reappraise the area every 4 years if they want to. There is an act, if you look on the bottom of page 58, there's an act in North Carolina called the Machinery Act. Now guys, that could be a testing area. The Machinery Act is an act that sets the standards for taxation, real property taxation. The standards are, for example, what I said, the community, the county, let's say the county, can reassess for tax purposes every 4 years. They must reassess by the 8th year though, because if you think about it, if you're paying tax on your tax value, it doesn't seem like it'd be very fair that the county waits every 8 years, because your tax value could really be much higher, couldn't it? So Guilford County assesses every 4 years. So it seems to me, we had our last assessment in 2016, it seems to me. I could be wrong on that, but they did an overall assessment. The Machinery Act also says in North Carolina let's pretend like you got your tax value, and let's say the letter says your property is worth $200,000. The Machinery Act says that should be 100% market value also. Market value is the value when you take the house to the marketplace, that's probably what it's worth. What do y'all think about that? Well, today in my class, today in the class, one of the students went, and I could tell, no, it didn't. Because she got her assessed value, and she said her house wasn't worth that. Now, you do have a right to appeal the process. You can contact the tax department within a certain amount of days, and you can say, I want to appeal this, I don't think my house is worth that much. Or we didn't even pay that much, or whatever you want to say, and they will come out and individually look at the property. Now, I hate to be too cautious, but the tax department does tell the real estate, they come and talk to the real estate board of realtors. We have luncheons, and the tax department will come talk to us because we're the people out there meeting the owners of the property. And so when tax rates are going to go up, or it's the year of the assessment, they usually come and speak at the board of realtors, like at a luncheon or a meeting, and they're giving us information so that we can explain it to our sellers and buyers. And they also tell you stories maybe to kind of discourage the appeal process. I'm just saying, maybe not. But one story they told us was someone called in to appeal the tax value. And so an appraiser from the tax department went out to see the house individually. And while he was walking around the property, he said, well, we didn't have down that you had added a room onto your house. We didn't have down that you had added a double garage. Up. Not down. Up. Now, I'm not saying don't appeal because you're afraid, that they might raise it. I mean, legitimately, you could say, I don't think my house is worth that. But they've told us stories like that. When we go out there actually and see it, we might say it's worth more. Now, they can't take that right away from you, though, the appeal process right. Does everybody follow me? Let's say we got our letter in 2016. Everybody got your tax value letter, and your property is worth $200,000. That means that probably if you took it and put the house on the market, it's probably worth that on the real estate market. The Machinery Act says it's supposed to be. The Machinery Act says these tax assessed values are supposed to be 100% market value at the time of the assessment. Well, everybody, let me move this around a minute. This is something that a real estate agent needs to know. So down here, the tax value in 2016 was $200,000. Now, it's going to stay that number until they do another reassessment, and they can do it in the 4th year. Don't you think your value could go up in 2018? Don't you think the value could come down too? We could have a recession. After this assessment, there's no direct correlation until they do the overall reassessment again. Here's what I mean in real estate. When you're showing property to a buyer, when brokers do, most brokers will run off the MLS data sheet, the information sheet that says how big the rooms are and, information about the property. It will have on that data sheet the tax value. And buyers do ask questions like this. Well, why are they asking? Let's just make it realistic. Why is that seller asking so much more than what the tax value is? You need to know how to explain that. Why is the seller asking $235? It says right here the tax value is $200.
Comps. Yeah.
Comps. That's what it's going, that's the value now. In 2016, 200 was the value, right? And the market changes. Guys, there's not a direct correlation except at one point in time. And over the time, between this time and the time they do another assessment, their property value could go up based on comps, based on what other people are paying for property this year, right? or could go down if we have a recession or something. So there's no direct correlation after that one point in time. If I said to you, I think that's a red flag statement. I think that's a red flag question. In other words, they made a point to say something about the tax value. I personally think I'm going to call the tax department and ask them when they're doing the next reassessment. Because couldn't it be like next year? And if it is, couldn't this number go up within a year and that buyer buys that property and then they don't know that the tax value is getting ready to change? I think that I would probably ask that question. Just seems like to me they've brought it up. Let's find out when is the next assessment. Because buyer, if you buy this property, you're paying taxes on a lower number. The house is worth $235 now, and you're paying taxes on $200. But if it's time to reassess in the next year or so, probably that base is going to be higher. And so that would affect what you're paying every month in your house payment. So it's a discussion I think that I would have.
When they reassess, is it, like for Guilford County, is it the whole county or like certain?
Whole
certain-
county.
Okay.
Whole county. They do an overall mass appraisal. So everybody gets their tax letter saying, here's what your new tax value is. Guys, I think they're pretty good on the money, most times, I really do. Now, I wasn't happy with the value of my property. I mean, I'm paying tax on what they said, but I really thought, because I know it's supposed to be market value, I was hoping my house was worth more than what they said it's worth. But we're paying tax on this, right? It doesn't mean if you take it to the market, somebody might not pay you more, but that should be the market value at that time. 100% market value. Interesting. Let me mention something else to you. They do, look at the bottom of page 59, the tax timetable. Well, the tax timetable under the Machinery Act, they're talking here really about the horizontal adjustment and the octennial adjustment. I mentioned to you that your county could reassess every 4th year. That 4-year adjustment or assessment is called a horizontal adjustment. If they wait and do it every 8 years, it's called octennial adjustment. Isn't that the bottom of page 59? The tax year, everybody, is the fiscal year of real property taxation is the same fiscal year that your real estate license is. What is that? When does the year start? How about July 1 to June 30th? That's kind of a governmental fiscal year, isn't it? That's the real property tax year too. But if under the Machinery Act, the community can reassess every 4 years, no later than the 8th year. They set the standards for taxation. I would make a note, in fact, let me show it to you here. On the bottom of page 58, look at your second to last paragraph. North Carolina property subject to taxation. All real property in North Carolina is subject to taxation. Although counties, this is a sentence I want you to listen to. Although counties and municipalities determine the real estate property tax rates within their jurisdiction, the Machinery Act has standards for the appraisals. All right, so let me interpret that in the form of a question. Does the Machinery Act have anything to do with your local tax rate? And the answer is no. The municipality establishes the tax rate they need in order to get the money for the budget that they need. The Machinery Act has to do with the appraised value. Tax rates are just local, whatever the budget is going to require, the community can raise the tax rate. Does that make sense? Let me say it differently. The Machinery Act does not have jurisdiction over the tax rate. The tax rate is local. It's a local decision based on the budget that the local area needs. So either the tax value can be raised to cover the budget, or the tax rate can be raised to cover the budget. Does that make sense? In the year of an assessment, if they did a reassessment in 2016, they're probably not gonna raise the tax rate that year either, at the same time. That would really be bad PR, don't you think? So they either can raise this to get the taxes they need for the budget, or in the off year, they can raise the tax rates. Guys, they're deciding this, generally you hear the budget talks on the radio or on the news during the spring of the year, because they want to have that established before June 30th, because they want it to go into effect July 1. Does that make sense? Tax rates, let's talk about that a moment. Tax rates in North Carolina are based on per $100 of value. So a tax rate in North Carolina is expressed per $100 of value. The value is the tax value. So let's put back our $200,000. That is our tax value. Per 100 means how many hundreds are in there. Per means divide. So if I divided 200,000 by 100, I get 2,000, don't I? There are 2,100s in that value. Does that make sense? So that means whatever the tax rate is, I multiply it by 2,000. So let's say the tax rate is $1.50 per 100. That's the way they say it. So how many hundreds are in my value? We said 2,000. And then if I say times $1.50, that will tell you what the yearly taxes are. Guys, get out your calculator. Let me show you a few things in that regard. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do this. That way is a way a lot of students like it. How many hundreds am I paying $1.50 on? So let's just do that in our calculator. 200,000 and divide it by 100. So I've got 2,000 of those hundreds that are going to cost me $1.50. Now multiply that by 1.50. And so the taxes are 3,000. You see that? So this gives you 3,000. Let me show you another way. I've got 3 more ways to show you how to do this. Here's the way I would do it. I would do it in my T-bar. I would say the tax value is the total, the whole number. It's the whole value. The tax rate is $1.50 per 100. Guys, per 100 means percent. Per 100 is a percentage. It's a rate, isn't it? They're just saying it in dollars and cents. For example, if you call down to the tax department and you ask them, what's the tax rate? They're going to say it's $1.50 per 100 of tax value. They're not going to say it's $1.50%, but it is $1.50%. Same thing as saying $1.50, hit the percent key, or $1.50 for every 100. So do this with me. Put 200,000 in your calculator and multiply 1.50 and then hit your percent key. What'd you get? 3,000. So I like to use the percent key because to me, this looks like an extra step I don't want to take the time to do. You know, stop and write down how many hundreds, because most of us probably can't just look at it. So I'm going to do that math, and then I'm going to multiply it. I see 2 steps. Right here, I see 1 step, because I'm going to change my per 100 to percent, because it's a rate, and rates are percentages, aren't they? So multiply that by that, and you get 3,000. Let me show you another way you can do this. Let me erase this here. Let me erase this. If we know the tax rate is $1.50 per 100 of value, we've got to do something with that per 100. We can either divide it into the tax value, or we can change it to a percent, or how about do it here and move that over 2 places to the left. Make that dollar a decimal. So let's put 200,000 in our calculator times 0.0150, because we used our 100 that away, and I got 3,000 again. So you can do it ever how you want to. I got one more way. So you can divide 100 into that and do it that way. You can make the per 100 a percent, or you can move the decimal and multiply it by 200,000. And so instead, per 100, I just moved my decimal over. Because what you did, everybody, put 1.50 in your calculator. Just $1.50. 1.50 divide by 100. So that's how you moved your decimal over. You're dealing with the per 100 one way or the other. Is that making sense? I know it's a rate, that's why I just use the percent key. I think it's quicker if you understand it. It's a quicker process. Let me show you one more way. Put 200,000 in your calculator times 1.50. And did you get 300,000? Divide that by 100. And you get your 3,000. So we're dealing with the per 100. Which way do y'all like the best? T-bar? You like the percent? Guys, if you can practice and get used to the T-bar, I promise you it'll make your math way easier. It's a lot easier, isn't it? Even my student in the day class, when we were together like the first or the second day, she came up and said, let me show you another way, and she set it up in algebra. This is algebra, but it's just presented a different way. And she said, and I can show you solve for X, and you move this. And I said, yeah, I get it. Algebra feels harder to me than just doing this. Today, she said to me, this is straightforward. And she said, this is easy. So you can do the math the way you want to, but I really do think you'll be doing yourself a favor if you try to practice the T. I really do, because you're either multiplying or dividing, one or the other. Since we talked about that, let's work on some. Go with me over, if you will, to page 67. All right, we're going to look at some of this math, but I want to mention one more thing. I don't know if this was brought up in your reading or not. I don't remember reading it, but maybe it was. You guys just read it, so maybe you can tell me. If the property is in the city, if you live in the city is within a county. If you live in the city, you're going to pay city and county tax rate. So you're going to pay both. If you live in the county, you only pay the county part of the taxes. So when you're reading a math question, if it says the property is in the city, they may say here's the county rate and here's the city rate, and you would add those together to figure the tax. Or they could give you both rates and then say, but the property's in the county. So you need to pay attention to know when do you use what rate. So look at number 15. And I want you to use your T on 15, 16, and 17 because they're all looking for something different. You can use your T. One's looking for the rate. One's looking for the rate. One's looking for the part. And one's looking for the value. So depending on what you're looking for, you will know to divide or multiply. If you're looking for a part of, you multiply. If you're looking for the value, you divide. So that would be divide. If you're looking for the rate, you also divide. So if you're looking for taxes, that means the part, multiply. If you're looking for the tax value, you're going to divide taxes by tax rate. If you're looking for the rate, you're going to divide taxes by tax value, and it'll tell you what the rate is. So take a few minutes on those two. How you doing on that? Some of you might have already done this before class, but how are you doing on that? Here's what I hear students tell me about the T-bar. The students tell me that the problem they have is figuring out which one's the part or the whole, the total value. Which one's the total value or which one's the part? Well, the way I would think about that is the part is part of the whole. So the part's going to be smaller than the total whole value. So if you're looking for taxes, you're probably looking for the part of the tax value. If they're asking you for the tax value, you're looking for a larger number because tax value will be bigger than taxes. And so, for example, on number 15, if you just look at your answer choices, aren't they larger dollars amounts than what they gave you in the question? In the question, they said the taxes are $1,600. And then they're asking you for the value, and that's a bigger number than what $1,600 is. And the clue in the question is they're asking for the assessed value. So that helps too, but your answer choices is a key also. They're looking for a bigger number. So if they're looking for a bigger number, that's what we're trying to solve for. And so now we know we are at least going to divide. Now we need to figure out what goes where. Always, always the rate's on the bottom. So what's the rate? $1.30 per 100, isn't it? Alrighty, so we don't know this. What's the part? 1,600. So in your calculator, the top of the T, the numerator always goes in the calculator first. If you have that number, it goes in first. So 1,600 divided by 1.30, and I would hit the percent key. Because then we wouldn't have to worry about figuring out where the hundreds are. Just hit the percent key. Now, some students I've seen will do the 80 cents and then they'll do the 50 cents, but guys, that's 2 steps, 2 or 3 more steps you don't need to do. You can just add those 2 rates together and do it just one time. So did you get A, 123,077? Does anybody have any question on it? All right, look at number 16. If you look at your answer choices, and they look a little bit small, but look at your question. The question says the tax value is 133. So that should tell you I'm not looking for the big number, I'm looking for the little number. Does that make sense? On number 16? And if you're looking for the little number, you must have these 2 side by side. They're asking you what the taxes are. So that means you must have these 2 numbers. And so they're asking for a part of. If they're asking for a smaller number, you're going to multiply, because you're really looking for the 1.678% out of 133,000. Now, is the answer D? No. And so there's a little hint. Probably when you figure your math, you need to go read the question one last time, because you might not have caught that they're asking for monthly tax liability when you read it the first time. So then you divide that 2,000 number by 12. And did you get B, boy? So you guys are doing good on this? Sounds like you all are doing pretty well on it. Well, what about 17 then? B, boy? Did it come in your calculator looking like that? Mine didn't. Mine didn't come up 1.09. Well, but it's, okay, here's the point I'm making. Let's put these numbers in here, everybody. Put 2,000 in your calculator and divide by 108.
It's an Amber alert.
Yeah,
What is
Oh.
I got it, sir.
Amber alert?
Missing child in Nashville.
Oh, gosh, that makes me sad. All right, so in my calculator, I got 0.010899. Right? Guys, listen to me a minute. They could have put that number in there as an answer choice. They could have had a choice 0.01089, and that is not the answer if they're asking for a rate. If they're asking for a rate, they're asking for dollars and cents if they're asking for tax rate. So you need to know to move your decimal over to convert it to a percentage. That's the point I'm trying to make. Angel, you understand that? Okay, so that's the point. Now, 1.089, that's not 1.09 really, but when you look at your answer choices, it told you they want you to round. And so when you had two nines there, they just said round. They could have easily have had 1.08 or 1.089, so you pick the answer that's closest to what you got in your calculator. Let's do another 1 or 2 of these. Why don't you do number 18? And then do 19. Because sometimes there's more than one step. What's the answer to 18? Did you get it yet? B. Because you're looking for the part of 129, aren't you? You're looking for 75%. Isn't 75% less than the total 100%? So out of means multiply. Now, other states don't tax, they don't do their assessed value based on 100% like North Carolina does. So getting a math question like that, don't question, just do what they say to do. Because other states don't have the machinery act like we do. So, but it says that they tax on 75% of it. And then what about 19? You had to do two little steps there. Did you get C? Anybody need help with showing that on the board? Two steps, you had to get the tax value before you can get the taxes. So the first step was, what's the tax value, or what are they paying tax on? So wasn't that $389? And they're taxing, is it 85%? Okay, so 85% out of that gives you, so that's what you're gonna pay tax on, the $330,650. So now that moves down here, because it's bigger than taxes, and then the tax rate was 110. And I'm just gonna hit my percent key. And then that will tell you the yearly taxes on that one. Everybody sort of okay? You may have a tax calculation on your final, so you would be using the T-bar here just to figure the taxes, and we're going to be doing something else. Let me take you back to page 60, please. Page 60. If you look at page 60, your second paragraph is talking about in North Carolina, and very important point. Guys, they're talking about prorating taxes. Prorating the real estate property tax when a person sells their property and they go to a closing. I don't want to teach this right now because I think it's a little premature. I would rather us talk about this. It's more involved than where we are, in my humble opinion. We're going to talk about closing, and we're going to talk about the closing math, and we're going to talk about prorating, which means divide fairly between the parties. We're going to talk about that in Unit 21. So I would rather say, let's talk about that then, because right now I think it's a little bit too much, to be honest with you. And so we'll come back to this when we get into the closing unit number 21. Go back to page 59 though, and toward the bottom of the page, it's bringing up that some states tax on the meal. So you do have a question about that. It's not a math question, but it's an understanding question. If states tax on the meal, it means that they're taxing on every $1,000 instead of every $100. So North Carolina taxes on 100 of value. States that use meals tax on the 1,000 of value. So all you would do is either divide the value by $1,000 and multiply it by the meal rate, or if the meal rate, what if it said the meal rate, what if it said 20 meals? You could make that a decimal by moving it left 3 places. And so then you got 2%, don't you? So a meal means for every 1,000. So you can either move the number, your decimal over 3 places to the left, or you can divide the tax value by 1,000 and multiply by 20. Either way that you want to do it. Bottom of page 61. Last paragraph, I want you just to take a minute or two and read that one. It goes over to the next page for a minute. But just read that about equalization. Does it make sense? Let me see if I can tell you a little bit. Guilford County is a real large county. Within Guilford County is Greensboro and High Point. High Point might have a different budget, a different tax rate than Greensboro does. But if Guilford County is working over on an overall county budget, they might have to equalize so that the tax rate's about the same. And so what that means is they're just increasing the overall rate by a certain percent. And in this illustration, they said they're increasing it by 20% for this year's budget. So they're equalizing, kind of making it all the same, because different cities within one county have different rates and they need to figure out the budget. And so they're raising it across the board, you could argue, equalizing it out. All righty, if you go with me to page 62, and at the top you see property taxation, and you see 3 formulas. Taxes is tax rate times tax value. Tax value is taxes divided by tax rate, and tax rate is taxes divided by tax value. I think I've said this before to you, but I'm not going to memorize those formulas because I know my T-bar. Because guys, we could be asking, instead of taxes, you could be asked about commission. You know, the commission is a part of the sales price, isn't it? And so then if you're asked about commission, it would be commission rate times sales price. What if you were asking about the sales price? It would be commission divided by commission rate. What if you were asked about commission rate? It would be the commission divided by the sales price. The point I'm making is we're going to learn a lot of 3s, a lot of 3 formulas, but I think that's a lot to put into my brain because there's going to be some other math other than the T-bar later. I would just know if I'm looking for a smaller number, I'm going to multiply. If I'm looking for a larger number, no matter what it is, tax value or sales price, I'm going to divide. If I'm looking for the rate, I'm going to divide. So if you know how to work this 3-in-1, it doesn't matter what the word is they're asking for. Is it a big number or is it a little number or is it a rate? And you can just plug it in the T-bar. Does that make sense? I hear students say, gosh, there's so many formulas to memorize. Well, this is a way not to worry about memorizing every 3-in-1 formula, because I don't think you need to if you understand the 3-in-1 formula. All right, any questions, any concerns? Let's do this then. Let's take our last break, and we're going to talk about Unit 4 next.